Hello there! Welcome back to Charles Circle, and welcome back to Captain of Industry. Last time, we built the foundations of our Silicon Ridge train network. So today, it's time to put that network to use and start producing basic electronics. Along the way, we're going to make some tweaks to our other two islands in order to help scale the rest of our supporting infrastructure as we build out this massive factory. So, let's get into it. Today's to-dos are organized by island. We're going to do something on each of the three, actually. Our main focus is going to be producing our first Electronics 1 over on Silicon Ridge here. We've got our train network infrastructure in place, we have a construction parts supply station out here, and we have our mining crews up and running. So we are officially ready to start building the relevant parts of each of these modules. Now, having a scaled Electronics 1 supply is also going to be helpful for a couple of reasons. It's going to relieve a couple short-term pressures we've been dealing with. We've been boosting at least 50%, sometimes 100%, this entire basic copper factory that we, have been relying on so far this entire game, just to keep up with the demand for constructing electrified tracks, right? These all require a good amount of electronics, and that's how we've been building our train network on Silicon Ridge and everywhere that connects to it. But it also requires Electronics 1 every time we want to build a construction parts 2 or above, and we, of course, are doing quite a bit of advanced construction in this factory. So we got through that pinch last episode, but we were forced to pause our research in order to do it because that supply chain consumes Electronics 1, even though, again, we've been boosting. So second, though, once we have Electronics 1 coming in from Silicon Ridge in significant volumes, this isn't going to go away. What we can actually do instead is divert the entire Electronics 1 production here into reinforcing our Electronics 2 production. Now, of course, we're going to build a similarly scaled Electronics 2 facility over on Silicon Ridge, probably in the episode following this one, but in the short term, it'll be nice to have these in higher supply as well. They're required, of course, for construction parts 4, along with a whole host of other things here and there. That's the whole reason to make this enormous factory. Now over here, number 2, on our main island of St. Charles, we're going to make those adjustments to our current copper factory that I just described, along with a few others, including a few actually viewer-inspired changes, which is great. The headliner out here, though, is going to be that we are going to expand/relocate our construction parts factory. So, of course, our previous one over here has been serving us well, but I think my mourning period is finally over for this thing. Rather than bemoan that my beautiful little upgradable construction parts factory was built for a pre-train network world, it's time to move on and create a new one that is built for train networks. Grief takes many forms, and apparently one of them is forcing a bunch of awkward lifts through congested highway zones. But today we move on, and we will make a brand new, same general concept, but brand new to be intentionally serviced by trains, both from a supply and delivery perspective, construction parts factory. So I'm pretty excited about that one. I've got a few other odds and ends earmarked for today on St. Charles, but we'll cover them as we get to them. On Islatres, however, we're finally going to give this poor island some long-deserved attention. As previewed last time, we're going to set up a sort of scaled, centralized salt production out here as an answer for how we're going to distribute brine. It's not something I've done at scale before, really. I typically end up with distributed salt production at all the various little coastal desalination stations I end up needing to set up to supply water, but that's just not how this playthrough is shaken out. We're getting all of our water comfortably from reservoirs, so we have the good problem of needing a new method for supplying salt and brine. We're also going to set up forestry out here. I was hemming and hawing towards the end of last episode about whether our existing forestry space would be enough for our wood needs now that we've mostly stripped, with some small exceptions, all of the natural forests from our existing 3 islands. And, well, a couple different viewers pointed out that why don't we just start planting trees out here on Islatres? And it's a great point. I mean, come on, man, you can't be concerned about wood supply if you're actively shredding overflow saplings, the thing that would give you more, so let's get after it, right? In fact, I'm going to take it a step further even, and we're going to relocate this forestry out there entirely. Part of shipping in the wood from out here on a more permanent basis begs this question of, well, where's our import station going to be? And just as we have sort of a zone reserved over here and temporarily occupied by a few starter stations, and we have this area right next to the bridge as an import-export zone on Silicon Ridge, I think it makes sense to have probably something similar out here. We've already started doing a bit of that with our oil export back in the day, but we need a drop-off and export area on St. Charles as well. And so I figure it probably makes the most sense to have in this zone, right? We're likely going to need to expand our farmlands eventually as well. We're holding up okay, actually better than I expected for the most part, but this is not going to last us long term. We're going to add a ton of employment over on that factory, which means we're going to add a ton of people. We're going to have to grow our population pretty significantly. By the time everything that we really need is built out there, I have to imagine we're going to be up over 5K at least. Let's see. And so as a result, we're probably going to have to scale up a lot of different supporting needs, including food. And so I imagine that the simplest thing would be to copy paste this and mirror it over this center line. We have plenty of water here and our entire setup is already here. So I think we can fit import export and some expanded farmlands in this zone. Let's see, but that's sort of the plan. And out on Islatres, right? Moving forestry really fits nicely into our land use cases out here. It's an island all about raw material extraction. So we've got plenty of mines here in the waiting bays. I have a feeling we'll tap, for example, the copper pretty quickly in order to help support our electronics factory out there. This has always been in my mind the nice little emergency reserve for iron, although we've navigated this transition all right so far. And this is the next big coal mine that will help us when our starter mine out here eventually hollows out, as it is well on its way to doing. So that's the whole purpose of this island, and forestry fits in with that both conceptually and also physically. It's got a ton of sort of awkwardly spaced arable land. It'd be really odd to try to fit a bunch of square farms in here, just the way that the grid works in Captain of Industry. So it would be, I think, relatively straightforward to just sort of fill in some spaces here. So I think that is the plan. Do you think we'll get it all done today? There's only one way to find out. I think, though, we should start with the new construction parts factory. It's straightforward enough, and we can let our trucks build it out while we walk through the parts of the Silicon Ridge factory that we're going to build today. So, as previewed, our new construction parts factory is going to be right here. It's going to be right off the intersection of these two main train lines, and it is still going to be accessible via our road for trucks to build here locally on St. Charles. A couple sort of improvements, although the exact same set of 4x4 machines building parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 are going to be right here. On the input side, we're going to bring in, with large storage buffers, our steel, concrete, and wood. On the other side, we're also going to bring in our electronics 1 and 2. We'll bring via longer belts all the way out and around those various input materials. Of course, these main 3 go into our first row, and then steel separately continues on to be added for parts 3 as well. Electronics 1 goes directly into the second row, and electronics 2 into the fourth row for parts 2 and 4 respectively. On the output side, rather than having everything sort of bounce back to the same input face that our old model was here, where everything faced the road, inputs and outputs, over here, inputs are on this side, and we flip the direction of the belt so that outputs are over here. The balancer setup that we have here is still, it's the same logic, right? We can decide to prioritize either the continuation onto more advanced parts or the export, and that is true for each of these 3. Of course, there's no 4th balancer because parts 4 are only for export, and they all come out and around via these belts to these larger storages. As I mentioned, they are available for export, at least. And those are obviously much larger buffers than we currently have. That is more good than bad, but there's always a trade-off, right? And the trade-off here is that we'll be sitting on a bunch of parts that we probably won't be using for a good amount of time. That's the sort of inventory carrying cost inefficiency, but at this point we can more than afford that. And our big constructions tend to be quite a few parts at once. So it will mean that our consumption, particularly of these key input ingredients, is a bit spikier, right? But with buffers on both ends, we should be able to absorb that smoothly. We'll keep an eye on it, of course. These are shuttles that we'll have to set up. They'll either reverse or be bidirectional. They are not going to loop, but I think there's enough space here. If we need to, of course, we'll just push back the belts and pipes. But I think there's enough space here to fill up pretty decently sized trains, and trying to learn from last time or implement last time's best practices that I think we'll have to adjust over on Silicon Ridge. I've left a good amount of space here coming off the main line so that a long train particularly doesn't clog up the main arterial by sticking out while loading. I do need to delete this and slot in an approach from this side as well, but I think that should do it. It does mean that we don't have this. That was already sort of an awkward road anyway, because it intersected this triangle, this T intersection of rail. But I think instead we're simply going to say that, yeah, the ability to get out past this side of rail tracks is actually redirected over here. That's what this new road is for, coming out to this intersection. I think that's all the change, so I'm going to go ahead and delete these real quick, and let's Unity do it real quick, because we definitely don't want our train network disrupted. So let's quickly get this patched in here, along with this intersection right there. And we will Unity build these tracks just so that things aren't broken. But the rest of the way, I think we will simply let our trucks get to the construction whenever they get a chance to, and they should get a chance to pretty quickly. We've got a much healthier truck network since we stopped doing all of that terraforming out here. They are very happy to run around and pave everything now, so hopefully they prioritize this. We'll keep an eye on it. Oh, I'm also going to want to get this built right away so that we still have a truck path. Cool. This we'll come back to. I want to get a better landfill export, not just here actually, but I think we're gonna have to beef it up in general. We are kind of full on dirt and rock in this mine, and it is in fact keeping us from being able to get our coal, which we're just now starting to get down into the vein. This should get better, but it's a good prompt, I think, to improve our landfill export, and I think we'll probably need to do something on this end of it as well. This is set up for smaller trains, and it's starting to require larger trains, so we'll probably tool around in this area later in the episode as well. But let's unpause and let our trucks get working there. The other thing that we wanted to do was get forestry moved out there. So how am I thinking about this? In the longer run, I think we have an import-export train station here and here. We're going to bring the wood here, of course, to a large storage buffer that we then use our smaller network trains to move around. But we have to get saplings out there, right? Now, we could build a farm out there, I suppose. It'd be pretty inefficient because, well, we would either have to alternate with something that we would bring in here, or just do crop rotation, or not and eat the fertility penalty, or we could bring fertilizer out there. I don't know. It just seems much simpler to move the one finished good that already fits nicely into our production chain just out across the bridge. So what I think we'll do is we'll just take a forestry tower, and let's start with this side so that we don't have to worry about this sort of out and around yet, although I'm certain we will expand there eventually. But let's say this goes here. Let's, in the short term, just do this via truck, but we'll get a train out here eventually and probably a better, larger storage. But let's get both of these built, and we'll assign everybody. I think we'll probably need another tree planter, if I had to bet. But we'll go ahead and pull everyone off here and set them up out here. So we have one tree planter, we have a large tree harvester, and 3 smaller fellas. We'll probably upgrade or consolidate here once we have a good feeling on scale, but we should set up an area. Let's draw a new one and just say, I don't know, for now, how about this whole space? We won't use every square of it, but that feels like a fine zone to designate. Maybe we'll even tidy it up a little bit and say along this ridge. And then we of course need to add our designation itself, which is to say this is the zone where we want things planted. We'll leave a little bit of a path here for our trucks to navigate through. I am thinking, right, we end up probably using this copper mine at some point. We can just pull back where we choose to reseed and let a road emerge. No rush to get that perfectly set up before then. So I'd say let's just go ahead and say, please fill all of this area in with trees. And let's keep an eye. I don't know if our sapling supply will be sufficient for all of this. In the short term, I highly doubt it will be, but the question is more, where are we going to settle in the longer run? So we might need to rotate in some more sapling production, or probably get another tree planter going. And in fact, I might even get another tree planter going proactively. Worst case scenario, it's a temporary thing that we turn into something else again later. So I think we should just do that for now. Good enough. Let me tidy up these last few extra squares. We'll probably tweak this over time, as I said. Let's make sure that we don't get that annoying little warning and move that up ever so slightly. There we go. So we'll have that stay full. And yes, go ahead and clean this up and this. So this area will now be not a forestry zone, but we do, of course, want our tree harvesters to cut it all down. In fact, maybe, actually, we shouldn't quite assign these folks here yet until that is sorted. So let's do that and pick a random little truck. You, sir, no, you're assigned to a mine tower. I want someone who's just doing random jobs. Come on. There we go. You are our lucky new tree planter, and we'll even make you hydrogen. Congratulations. As soon as these materials show up here, we will have a new tree planter. Oh, that's interesting. Are we going to have trouble getting vehicle parts 1 over here? We don't really supply it. Well, let's see if that's an issue. If it is, we'll just allow the export from here if it gets backed up. I'll keep an eye on it. But that's fine. So this should all be in motion then. And once this is all trimmed up and flattened out, we'll go ahead and set up the import-export train station stuff. And in fact, maybe we will even say, please start at this end, although he seems to be doing it naturally. So good enough, good enough. Okay. All right. So with those 2 projects in motion, it's probably time to go over to Silicon Ridge and walk through the factory, or at least the modules that we're going to be building today. All right, so let's walk through what we need to make Electronics 1. There's a lot going on out here, so I acknowledge that. Let's today just aim to cover what we need to in order to get Electronics 1 up and running, and we'll talk through the Electronics 2 stuff next time when we build that. So, of course, we know it's a simple recipe to make electronics. Even if making it at scale is maybe not easy, it is still simple. We just need more of what we've already done. So, as we know, we start with copper ore. We're also going to need to bring in sand and coal. Hopefully that gets sorted out here shortly. We need to grind the copper ore into crushed copper ore so that it can go into our smelting stage. So the blast furnace is what we're going to keep using out here. We could, of course, use arc furnaces, right? The big difference between these two, as we, I think, are familiar at this point, is the massive use of electricity compared to the Blast Furnace 2's use of coal instead as a primary fuel. There's also a graphite supply requirement and a water steam recycling loop and less exhaust. But ultimately, I think we're going to stick on blast furnaces at least for these first few modules that we set up. I, of course, reserve the right to switch over or mix and match later on, but I think we're going to stick with these for two reasons. One, if we have 8 of these times 6 megawatts, that is 48, right? 48 megawatts of power, and that would consume fully half of the 90 megawatts capacity we just set up out of the nuclear plant. Oh, and by the way, it looks like it's time to extend our storage here for depleted uranium. I don't think we want to do that, and also we're going to need a ton of acid later in the copper electrolysis step, right? And we're also going to need acid, as we've mentioned, in a couple other areas on this zone. We're going to need it for glass mix, for some of the nuclear support, etc. And you make acid from sulfur, and one of the good ways to get sulfur is to strip it out of exhaust. So I think blast furnaces make more sense here coming and going, so I think we're going to stick with that at least for now. If you prefer to spend your electricity on arc furnaces, I won't stop you, but that's how I'm going to set this up. So of course, as usual, our 3 inputs come in on our 3 input belts, literally copied and pasted, at this stage at least, from our previous copper builds. On the output side, these molten channels don't have an upper tier, so they do cap at 120, which means we can get 2 but not 3 into a single channel. Fine, we do all of this pairwise, and we end up with 8 outputting into 4 channels. And then each of those 4 supplies 4 metal casters, each in the following stage to give us all that impure copper. Real quick, the other 2 outputs we have to deal with are slag, which will run out on this belt and consolidate up and send out that way. We'll talk about it in a moment in more detail. And whoops, the other is exhaust. And I left one set unconnected. But there we go. The exhaust, which actually ends up being quite significant. So if there's 36 times 8 times 4, right? Ultimately, we're talking about quite a bit of exhaust. So we merge that all up into significantly large pipes. The pipe 4 can handle up to 900. 450 is the capacity of a pipe 3, so we still actually need to go up to pipe 4s if we just want to have 2 of them. And you can see, by the way, these fellas, and we're going to use them not just for exhaust, but also for water and for acid supply, they take a decent amount of steel. You know, you're starting to see why I decided that bringing in steel as a construction supply to get this all stood up maybe makes a bit of sense. So the exhaust continues out this way, off to the exhaust scrubbers, which we'll talk about in a moment. But let's finish tracing the copper stages. So of course, we know we have to take our impure copper, run it through an electrolyzer, a copper electrolysis machine, mix it with some acid, and we get out our final product of copper. The copper itself, we simply run along belts here to this export station, which I suppose we will call Silicon Ridge copper export, I guess. I'll probably go back and unify our naming scheme for all these train stations in a bit. But it will be exported by train out along this little spur, and we'll send it off to the manufacturing zone, which we'll come back to in a moment. But that is essentially the end of the copper production chain. We just need to cover acid. Now acid, I said we're going to strip all of this sulfur and then run it through up to quite a few mixers ultimately. And it'll come out acid here, and then acid we're going to run along a pipeline. And similarly, I know it doesn't look like a lot, but we have quite a few of these machines, right? So 16 in each of these modules times 4 times 6. So that ends up being almost 400 acid, right? So that can be a pipe 3, at least to this segment, which is what it is once we branch off here. But we're going to continue in the future this pipeline as a supply generally out to the rest of the base, just as we will set up with water in a little bit here. Also, while we're in this zone, it's worth maybe mentioning that all of the slag does come out and meet up here, and we're going to put it into a unified sort of export station here as well. We do make slag as part of the exhaust scrubbing stage, and it's right next door, so makes sense, I think, to consolidate. In the longer run, we have a couple more smelting stages here that will also export a bit, and so we're going to keep using this sort of, I don't know, service access road back here as the sort of consolidation for a good number of these sort of supporting inputs and outputs. I will say briefly, I know this looks like a lot, this is just the same thing 4 times, right? And so I'll provide as a blueprint one of these essentially, and then you can slap it down. If you don't think 4 times is necessary, that's totally reasonable. You can place it once, you can place half of it. We're definitely not going to build all of it. I think we may build half of one module to start. Let's come back to that thought, because copper is only one part of the input into Electronics 1. It's the largest part, but we also have to cover rubber. Before we do though, this little bit of red is bothering me. We're going to need a lot of workers, and fortunately we have housing 4. We haven't yet actually implemented this, but we don't need to expand our footprint. We can simply supply, well, a whole bunch of parts for some glass and steel, but we'll make that happen, and that'll get us from, what, 240 up to, well, never mind. I don't remember these off the top of my head, so I was trying to avoid looking it up, but here we go. We're going to go from 240 to 400, so that should give us another 160 times however many of these we need. That should have us covered for a little while. And yeah, as always, the reminder on the housing upgrade part is, as you can see here, our increased demands will go up for every single one of these that we upgrade to, and so we will only do it as we need to. But on the other hand, it does give us at least the potential for a better combo bonus, but we are not going to be supplying, we're not even supplying household appliances because we don't have Electronics 2 in enough supply. We're going to be 2 steps behind with consumer electronics, which requires Electronics 3 aluminum. So we're definitely not going to keep all the way up there, but we'll take the increased capacity, if nothing else, in the meanwhile. Okay, rubber. So rubber we can make in a rubber maker, as we know, from either diesel or naphtha. These are our 2 favorite recipes. They take a little bit of sulfur, but the version with sulfur avoids making wastewater and is a little bit higher throughput. So we're currently making our rubber from naphtha out here. Now, it's sort of an interesting question, right? We've done this here because we wanted to preserve our use of diesel for our truck network, right? It's an important fuel, and all of the trucks still on this island take diesel. The interesting thing out here, though, is this is not set up to be an island that requires a lot of trucks, period. And the ones that are out here, the mining crews, are all hydrogen. So we actually don't need to be supplying diesel out here. So it doesn't actually make sense. There is a cracking recipe where you can take naphtha and turn it into diesel, but there's a cost to doing it, right? It costs you some hydrogen, the workers, the cracking unit space, etc., and you get 1-to-1, but it's not actually a difference here. So if we would be taking diesel and turning it into naphtha, why don't we just use the diesel and make the rubber directly? Skip an unnecessary side step. So that's what we'll do out here. This refinery is going to be set, every refinery that I build is set to cap itself when it runs out of one specific good. it was diesel at this refinery in our home base. At this refinery, it'll be naphtha. So how this will work, high level, we're going to still have our basic distillation, right? It's going to come in, we're going to take crude oil, we're going to pass it through the distillation, and we're going to get the same things that we do out of these set that we do from the other set. We're going to get out heavy oil, we're going to get out diesel, we're going to get out naphtha, and a bit of fuel gas. We'll have to deal with some sour water. It's what we do next that is really what goes into customizing or calibrating a refinery. We're going to use the heavy oil to run the boiler that will power this whole thing. There's going to be a little bit of overflow, if I've done my math correctly, a little bit of overflow that we will deprioritize an output out to a cracking unit, and we'll turn that into naphtha. But that's really it. Heavy oil is going to be 91% consumed just running the whole thing. The next two steps, right? The diesel that comes out, I already said we're going to run over here to a storage and then through that storage into the rubber makers. We don't need 6 right now, but ultimately we have the capacity. The ratios of these machines is such that this will allow us to handle or produce enough diesel for 6 rubber makers eventually. And it'll also make enough naphtha for 4 polymerization plants to make plastic eventually. We'll have to handle a couple other things along the way. In order to make this right, we're going to need sulfur. We can get some sulfur from the sour water stripper here, but it'll make 9, and when it has both of these sets going, remember these sets are sort of 2 to 1 for a sour water stripper as a ratio. At cap, it'll make 9 sulfur, whereas we're going to need 3 times 6, 18 sulfur, so we're going to have to import a little bit of sulfur. So we'll do that here. We'll prioritize the locally produced sulfur, of course, in this balancer, but backfill it as necessary with a little shuttle train dropping some off every once in a while. The other thing that we need to make plastic, by the way, just to be clear, we need for the electronics 2-step. As you'll recall, it's a significant input into the PCB step. The plastic also requires chlorine, right? And this is another spot where we're going to need that salt flat because chlorine is made from brine in an electrolyzer. And by the way, we have the electrolyzer 2 technology, which I think I previewed last time as something like a 4x throughput upgrade, which is lovely. And now that I look at it, I think the lower version is 300 kilowatts, so it's actually technically a slight efficiency gain in terms of electricity as well. But more importantly, it means we only need one of these machines instead of a whole array of them over here, so that's great. But as mentioned, we're going to bring in salt rather than pumping from some shoreline and a very long pipeline to get here. We're going to bring in salt in the same loose good train that's supplying our sulfur, or at least part of that same network, and we'll turn it and some water, which we are going to hook up to this set of groundwater pumps from that reservoir. And that will give us the other output, or other input that we need to make plastic. I believe this should all be balanced, or close enough, especially with buffers, that this cracking unit here taking just the tiny bits of overflow of heavy oil and turning that into naphtha and fuel gas should keep everything balanced. I don't trust it perfectly because, I don't know, I've just spent too much time troubleshooting refineries. I have a feeling we're going to have another cracking unit or 3 over here eventually just to take care of some edge cases. We'll adjust as we need to, but there are, of course, 1,000,001 recipes to handle each of the potential overflow scenarios we could have here. So, of course, as I mentioned, we have to take care of the sour water. It takes a bit of steam, again, coming from the same boiler. We are going to put out the sulfur I already talked about. We're going to put out some ammonia and some water. The water, we are simply going to prioritize in our recycling loop. We do need to, this is where our connection to the rest of the water main will actually come in. and it'll backfill. I also wanted a bit of a buffer here just because in case this water needs to sit somewhere while this is still backing up. Anyway, a small water buffer here I think might be helpful, might be unnecessary. It fit, so it's there. The other output, of course, is ammonia, and it's interesting. We are, from some perspectives, actually kind of hurting on ammonia. It's not been super consistent out here, and that's impacted our fertilizer production. That's actually been because over here the refinery has run less often in general. Our diesel consumption has slowed down since our truck network is healthier and not getting annihilated in the same way. And so where is it? If you want to see the stats here, like we actually nosedived on ammonia production for a bit, and it showed up a little bit in sulfur too, but not as bad because we have other sources of it. At any rate, there's an argument in some senses to save this precious resource and export it. That's a lot of complexity to send it all the way across the map though, because the other thing that we can do if we need to is synthesize it from hydrogen, which we have coming out of our ears, and nitrogen, which we can easily make in an air separator. So if we need to add that at the fertilizer setup, we will. I'd rather do that than transport it. So we're going to do the same thing we do at the other refinery and simply electrolyze this. It's the exact same thing I just said, but in reverse. And the nitrogen will vent off here, and the hydrogen will come out here. We're going to prioritize that supply out this way to fuel this cracking unit as necessary, but the rest of this will be exported at this train station. And we're going to have to make sure that this stays empty. Now there's a couple places that we will be able to consume it. There's hydrogen's an input into the silica production over here, which we'll talk about next time. We also, as we know, have to bring in a good amount of hydrogen out this way just to fuel all of our trucks in the area. So I don't think getting rid of this is going to be a problem, especially if we prioritize it on our network, but we definitely want to keep an eye on this. We can't have this backing up. The electrolyzer, though, is not going to be the main source of producing that, and therefore my angst around it backing up. The hydrogen reformer is probably going to be that source because it's going to handle all of the fuel gas that comes out at this stage and left over from this stage, any cracking that comes out here. That's going to vent a bit of carbon dioxide. Again, there's an argument, directionally correct argument at least, to be made that this CO2 should turn into the graphite that we are going to need for our arc furnaces. And in fact, over at the exhaust scrubbing facility, we're going to do a good amount of that. I'm just not willing to run a very long pipe for the occasional extra bit here. We have so much more already in this area. And maybe that is a good segue into this area because we are going to need to build some part of it in order to handle all of the exhaust coming out of the copper step. So quickly, we have 4 exhaust scrubbers here, and they handle this weird little pretzel of a balancer. It's not so much about balancing as it is consolidating a series of pipes and then distributing them. The 480 exhaust is actually slightly larger than the 450 you can fit in a pipe 3. So just trying to spread it out evenly, I guess. These two are the exhaust, consolidated exhaust outputs from these blast furnaces, and there will be, as I mentioned, probably a couple other pipes that come out and join up here as well. The 4 exhaust scrubbers, though, should be able to handle just about everything that we can throw at it. The vast majority is the blast furnaces. That's that like 1200 figure that we calculated earlier. It's some, but not nearly as much, from up to 4 plastic makers and 1 boiler, even if that is running the most polluting recipe of heavy oil. This should be plenty, at least for now. Of course, it requires water, which, as we said, we will hook up here. This is our water input, and this will be our balancer for the recycling loop, but we need to connect this to the water main that we'll have to build as well. As usual, right, we're going to have to recycle some steam. I'm not going to do the turbine thing here. We explored the pros and cons of that last time we built one of these, and I think we made the point. It's possible. I just don't think it's quite worth, the juice isn't quite worth the squeeze here, so I'm not going to bother, but of course, feel free if you'd like to. We'll have to bring in some limestone, Do that via this train here, sort of one of our smaller bidirectional shuttles coming off of this main line and being supplied by the limestone out here. We will, of course, spit out, well, slag, as we mentioned, and run that out here to this export station, as well as the sulfur that we talked about turning into acid. I believe that this won't be quite enough sulfur, but I could be wrong, and it could be too much sulfur for all of the acid that we need. In either case, we'll use this station to either import or export, but I have it set up to import because that's my best guess for now. Probably have to adjust this, and we might have to flip it back and forth a couple different times, to be honest with you. But it's an easy enough change, especially on the new train network. You can just say, oh, actually, it's keep empty now instead of keep full. You don't have to change an entire train line, and I think that's going to be a lot easier to deal with. But we'll prioritize, of course, the recycled input here from the exhaust scrubbers themselves. And then the last thing to talk about is the CO2 output. So it's actually quite a bit, right? Now we, of course, are reducing by volume the total amount of exhaust down into carbon dioxide, but at max capacity, right, it's still going to be the better part of 1,000 CO2. And so we're going to have to run that out here. It does fit, at least in this consolidated pipe. It's still less than that, which is nice. We'll run it out here and then through as many of these chem plant 2s as we need, and that'll produce up to 36 graphite. And it'll be less than that because this is a little bit more capacity. I think it's something like 5.5 of these, really. So that's the other reason we're not using arc furnaces. All of this enormous setup of exhaust processing produces a total of, let's just be generous, let's say 36 graphite. And if you want to run one of these guys, that's enough for 12 of these, which is enough to run 1.5 of these modules. And that only works because we have all of the exhaust from these modules in the first place. So if you replace one of these modules with arc furnace 2s, you kind of still need all 3 of these in order to run it. Either that, or you have to produce the graphite from coal in the first place, and I just would rather not. Technically, that is power positive, technically, barely, but it's just not worth the trouble to me. So anyway, that's my blast furnace 2 bias coming in yet again, but there it is. So that is the overall logic here. We do export those graphite rods out this way because we do, of course, have to use the arc furnaces for molten silicon. There is no blast furnace recipe for that, so we do have a good use for them out here. We'll talk about that next time when we get to electronics 2. Whew, okay. That's, I think, the tour. We need to do 2 things before we can build too much, at least. And the first is to get the water main up and running, so I'll have to draw that pipe. And the other is for me to catch my breath, because that was quite a tour. So I'll be right back in 2 seconds. Okay, I'm back. I touched some grass and built the water main, which starts over here and branches off here for our refinery access, and then also here for our exhaust scrubbers, and pretty significantly here for all the volume of water we're going to need for acid. 8 of these mixers eventually, potentially, times the 60 that each one requires. It also continues up this way for some future connections. I don't think we'll build that segment yet, but it's there, so the space is earmarked. Can we build some stuff? I'm really tired of talking and would like to get some stuff building, right? So we're going to start with a very small fraction of the overall capacity at first, just to test things out. And we'll start here at the top of the value chain for copper. Maybe I'll build half of one module, and even that'll probably be a pretty decent chunk, but we'll get 1/2 of, say, this one in motion, and all of course the supporting infrastructure required for even just a fraction of this. We'll need the train station built, all the tracks. We will, of course, be generating exhaust and require acid, so that means some fraction of this facility will need set up. Let's just start there, and we'll come to the refinery next, but I'm gonna jump in here and get some stuff unpaused. All right, Skipping ahead, I have unpaused, I think, all of the core infrastructure, tracks, etc., stations, storages, and belts and pipes that we'll need in order to support 1/8 of the overall capacity here, and it's going to take a while. So we're going to let our trucks work on building that, but it's going to take a while because we haven't even really finished. We should check in quickly, but we haven't even really finished our higher priority initial construction project here, the new construction parts factory. So I've updated the construction priority here over the baseline of 12 that everything else is at by default. So hopefully this gets tackled first, and then we're able to get this onto the right network and have these machines start chewing out parts for us as well. I think we probably won't be in a rush to get rid of this capacity, although maybe we'll clean some of this up in the meanwhile, but it'll be nice. This is like a good moment for us to accidentally or coincidentally be having two separate construction parts factories. It's going to crush our population though, despite the fact that we have our first housing 4. This is a very shiny modern type of housing, and it's the highest level in the game. So of course we're continuing to get new pops growing into this space, and it's not happening faster, is it, than we are able to employ them. If we do drop below, we can always spend Unity upgrading, or adopting rather, from various settlements. We've upgraded our reputation a few of these different places. We probably have 100 or so that are available to us. I'm not going to speed it up faster than we need to, but if we do go negative, we can always trigger that as well. Let's check in on the forestry setup. How's this going? Hey, we have our first little saplings in the ground, so that's nice. This is not a problem if it's full. We're going to leave that. And this should eventually, or could eventually, turn into our tree station. This is our old oil patch export that we very briefly had out here. But let's let this grow in a little bit more before we worry about the infrastructure. And then on this side, we are continuing to harvest, and it seems like we still have a few trees left over, so no problem there. Okay, yeah, so as feared, we're gonna have to make some adjustments on this set of stations. So first and foremost, this longer train, which we set up to deal with the higher volumes that we're navigating here, is too long to even be able to pull all the way in and fill up, and more importantly, get past this branch so that it can then go back out in the other direction. And while it's filling up, the early cars in particular, it's just hanging out into the main thoroughfare as we were worried. So we're going to extend out here, and in fact, I think I'm going to quickly go ahead and do that with Unity. And in a moment, we'll move all of this down to, like, I don't know, probably here-ish. The limiting factor is that all of these things, the storages and the train stations themselves, cost parts 3. And boy, is that ever what we are hurting on. That in pops. So I'm going to see if I can find a better moment to do this. This will work in the meanwhile because we're not so high traffic that hanging out into the main thoroughfare is a huge issue yet, but I'd rather not deal with it. So let's keep an eye on our parts 3 and see if we can't find an opportune moment to make these adjustments over here. And I'll go deal with this workers issue. Temporary fix, just to buy time, we are going to pause all of these buildings as they come online. They're not exactly being productive yet, while everything else is still being built, so we'll save the pops there. And, you know, that doesn't solve it, but what it does do is buy more time for the natural growth rate to fill in, and that way we don't have to spend so much Unity ripping all of the pops we can off of the world map. While we're waiting for some stuff to get built, I wanted to show off a change over here that is directly inspired by a viewer. So Rafka, who is playing along at home, posted a bunch of screenshots showing his version of the build in our Discord over the weekend, and I thought it was really cool to see. And one of the things that he's done that I hadn't done but am now doing, definitely taking, is that he solved the sort of train traffic issues that you've probably noticed here and there can pop up at the entrance and exit of this waiting bay. The long and short of it, if I'm sort of critiquing the way that this is set up and how I would do it differently if I felt like rebuilding it right this moment, The issue is that the waypoint station itself is directly in the center, which in some ways makes sense because you want to be able to approach from either side, from either train orientation, but what it means is that it's functionally half as long, and so the longer trains, the ones that we have on our landfill network, for example, that are 2 tier 2 cars long, can hang out a little bit into these no traffic or no stop zones, which can clog up the ability of other trains to enter or exit the bays. And it's not the end of the world. I notice it every once in a while and I just reset a train and life goes on. But it is a little annoying and it does occasionally slow things down. It would be better if that didn't happen, right? And Rafka made a very simple change that didn't require rerouting or rebuilding anything. What we do now instead is we go into our manufacturing network, the short set of trains, right? These are only single car trains. The waiting bays for this network are now only call it the inside 5 waiting bays. So I've named them short bay 1 through 5. And the landfill disposal network, which has the longer 2-car trains, are only allowed to wait in the long bays, these outside lanes, because they are further in, essentially. They are a longer amount of track, and so they can host the larger trains. Again, there's a million changes we can make here, and picking, moving where the station is, or making this entrance one side only, exit one side only, so on and so forth. There's a bunch of different ways you could solve this issue, but this was the simplest one, and I thought that was really elegant. So well done, Rafka. Thank you for your inspiration, and I'm definitely taking this for my version of the save, and if anyone else is playing along at home and wants to solve that probably persistent issue, they should also take it and thank Rafka. And if you are playing along at home and you want to show off some deviation that you've made that's either just fun and creative or you think is more efficient, you should absolutely take screenshots, post them in the Discord. I think it's awesome when we all learn from each other and help inspire each other to make a better, different version of the game. Another thing I want to quickly fix is the last time we were going through and acknowledging and thanking all of our newest channel members for joining, I completely missed Binders99 joining as a member. So as a combination thank you / apology gift, we'll be dedicating this as Binders Bridge. Thank you to Binders and all of our supporters in every form. Without your support, this wouldn't happen. You make this possible. It's as simple as that. So thank you. Okay, a little while later, the construction parts factory is up and not quite running yet, but well on its way. I extended the train tracks a little bit further and therefore ran the belts out and around a little bit further. Figured, you know what, while we're here, let's take full advantage, make full use of this whole city block instead of leaving an awkward amount of space. Make sure that we, in the longer run, can accept much longer trains. And speaking of longer trains, that's actually a good segue into I've already calibrated our supply network for bringing in goods to the beginning of this factory, and there's another separate network for exporting, and we'll talk about why that is when we get to it. But let's start with the supply network. So I wanted to have a distinct one from our basic manufacturing network simply because of the length of train. So our basic manufacturing network uses this size train for all of the small shuttle type runs that we need to make around the base to drop off small amounts of electronics and steel here, and so on and so forth. These are larger storages, larger goods. This is a bigger factory and is only at Assembly 3 right now, and we are actually halfway through researching Assembly 4, and then Assembly 5 is not far off. So I figured let's get out ahead of all of that and make sure that this can handle a high volume or a high velocity of goods passing through the factory, therefore a high volume of input goods. So space for longer trains and a distinct manufacturing network here that uses that longer train model that we already have. And breaking the longer trains out into a distinct network is the exact rationale, I think, that we used for why we wanted a separate landfill disposal network, right? These are the longer trains to send these big piles of slag, rock, dirt a farther distance all the way down to our export shoreline area. So similarly, I figured it made sense to make this distinct from our basic manufacturing network. They serve slightly different purposes with slightly different train models, so let's treat them differently. So that network brings in the concrete and steel already. We'll talk about wood in a moment, but we didn't have to do anything new on the input sides for that. We simply, as you can see, if I select our stations here, you can see that these are our two delivery stations, but the existing steel station is a good export spot to supply that. And I know it's empty, but these are all running at 100%. Just as like a side note, we are maybe not producing enough steel right now, just given how many parts, and specifically parts 3, we've been running through. And that's in addition to a pretty significant pile in the loan department. But so we supply our steel here, and we supply our concrete here. Keep in mind, this used to be exclusively an export station for supplying concrete out to Silicon Ridge. We'll come back to that. But we actually do need to separately export it now to our construction parts factory, something we didn't used to have to do because we simply sent it across the street like so. Okay. Wood we will set up when we have forestry in a moment, but then the other two things to talk about quickly are electronics 1 and 2. And that's just this station for now. Of course, we will set up a proper import station over here once we have everything up and running on Silicon Ridge, but for now, this will do. So it just has the same long bays, and actually, I should add this now. I added a fourth one here just because we've added more trains. So it's the same longer end here since these are longer trains, and we use the same fuel stations that we have variously around the base right now. As a side note, I think we probably do need to add another one of those somewhere. We just got more and more trains, and I haven't seen too much traffic around it, but it might be good to have one in a different area as well, since we're running a bunch of stuff down here. You know, it could be good to do. We'll put it on the list, that very long list of things to do. So then how do we handle export? So I consolidated a handful of individual lines. We used to have dedicated lines because it was coming from one place and going to one place, a point-to-point transport. We used to have a single line that sent concrete from this station here all the way out to this station here. Similarly, we used to have a single line that took construction parts and exported them from this station and brought them out to this station. So I folded those two lines into a new network, which we're just going to call the Silicon Ridge Materials Network. It brings in from concrete and construction parts export, and it drops off here at our main station for supplying those goods in Silicon Ridge. Both of these stations, actually, for the concrete and the construction parts. The other thing that it does is absorb, and I need to clean this up, but it does absorb, I think, the need for this mega vehicle supply dedicated line as well. So we set this up initially so that we could get mega vehicles out here to hurry up the terraforming effort, something that I'm still very pleased to see is complete. That was hanging over our heads for a while, but we don't need to be making any more mega vehicles out here, at least for now. So this line doesn't do much for us, except every once in a while it comes in and tops off this hydrogen supply for essentially this fuel station. We have a ton of dedicated hydrogen supply coming in over here though. What if we just moved this station out here, and then we could sort of mothball this entire setup, and we wouldn't even have to knock it over. It would still be functional if we added it to that same supply network, because hydrogen aside, it's just flat goods. So that's the other piece that we want to have on this network. So let me add that extra bay here as well, and make sure that we have the proper stations here. So this is our supply, or our originating station for those goods, and then we'll need to make sure that the drop-off station is here. Same for our concrete and construction materials. So Same model of train, right? The double length flatbed tier 2 train. Just one train for now is the other part here. We used to have 3 dedicated trains running that supply, and that does mean, I think, that we can get rid of this train, let him finish unloading, and send him to get recycled, essentially. We'll be able to use these parts for other trains. So I think that increases the efficiency. We should be able to supply all 3 of these lines now, essentially, via our single new train for those goods. I'm starting to think, actually, now that I think about it, we should probably put the steel and rail parts supply on that network as well, and then that way we don't have to ask our manufacturing network to handle that. So you know what? Let's do that as well while I'm thinking about it, which is just as simple as adding this station and removing out this way. Let's say, well, we don't need the wood supply station. That can go. And this basic materials import one is also solved. Okay, great. So I think that helps. This should consolidate and make more efficient our efforts here. We'll keep an eye on it. We may have to add a second train out here. The steel's looking low, but I really think that's just a supply issue, unfortunately. We might end up needing to boost some of this. This is still, yeah, double checking, 100% all the way through. So we're just going through the stuff, unfortunately. That's life. But that is a direct consequence of all of the massive amounts of construction that we've been doing. The last thing we'll have to do, of course, to supply our construction parts factory is get wood delivered. And so we are going to at least build part of what I think will be the transshipment model for bringing wood onto Silicon Ridge. So, longer run, and I haven't set it up out here quite yet, but it's going to take a minute for these trees to all grow in. Once they do, and we start harvesting them here, we will have a dedicated export line that sends wood out here, and it delivers it, why go any further, just right here to our newly cleared space for what will probably be a series of import stations. So the train will come over here and drop off at this set of stations, and the wood will flow through to this set of stations. This set of stations will be on our manufacturing network, both, I would say, the basic one, although really the only thing that we are supplying by train right now, at least, with wood will be the construction parts supply network, which we will make sure that this station is on immediately. Now, we also want to make sure that wood is available by truck to everything on this island, because we, for example, bring it in down here for household goods, something we supply by train manually right now at those volumes, and we also need it up here for the supply of paper, right? So for now, because we don't have a proper supply set up yet, and because we're trying to clear out all of these trees, we're going to make sure that this is not only available for export, but actually for import as well. So what we need to do is simply make all this and have our construction parts supply network add this station to the group. And again, not that it's going to do anything, but technically we do want this to be accessible to the broader manufacturing network so that it's simple to add wood supply to any other factory we want our basic manufacturing network to service in the future. This will take a moment to build because we are still hurting on the parts 3, but once it is up and running, hopefully, that should be the final missing link to getting our construction parts factory in motion, because we have both sets of electronics, not full obviously, but in sufficient supply to work, as we do with concrete and steel. So let's check back in shortly. A random update or two while we wait for our construction parts to accumulate. So I mentioned early in the episode that ammonia has been a bit touch and go, and that was trickling into fertilizer, and that has actually, at our furthest away farm, started to have a bit of an impact on soil fertility and therefore crop generation, which is not ideal. So it officially has my attention right now, and I think in the longer run, we probably still will need to add a chem plant 2 here to synthesize some backup ammonia, but in the shorter term, I expanded our diesel storage, which should at least allow us to churn through and make a decent amount of ammonia here in the shorter term. It's also like low-key turning into an issue for rubber, but we could fix that real quick by simply switching over, just as we talked about on Silicon Ridge, from naphtha into diesel. And there's an argument for that. We'll keep an eye on this. That would not only increase or decrease our sort of lack of naphtha, right? Because that's an issue when we run out of byproduct because we're not processing enough oil to turn into diesel. But it would, in the same way that a diesel generator can fix the insufficient byproducts for power problem by both generating power and increasing diesel consumption, right? We would be able to hopefully rebalance things over here as well. So this is sort of an ongoing, I don't even want to say B story, it's more of a C story, but we don't want to have a crop failure. So just keeping an eye on this in between projects for sure. So another update, in order to try to boost our steel production a little bit here, I have started to boost a third of the entire capacity here. That has meant a few sort of knock-on things. The first is, well, we have to boost the exhaust scrubber as well, and that meant increasing some pipe throughput, but it also meant that this low pressure turbine was insufficient to cover all of the now newly doubled steam low coming out. And so we have to have a little bit of an overflow mechanism here, so I put in a bit of a pipe balancer here and sent the extra out this way, so at least we get the water back. So a couple tweaks here just to make this boostable. Another wonderful thing about Blast Furnace 2s is that you can do this in times of crunches, if you can afford the Unity. So that's one we'll have to keep an eye on, but it's helping. We are starting to get a little bit more steel in here, so happy to see that. The happy byproduct, though, of the reduced activity at this refinery is that we were able to draw back a little bit already on our oil rig commitment here. And yeah, I've dropped back down to 60 a minute on this one and 90 on this one. We were at sort of cap for both of these, and that has meant a little bit of Unity freed up as well as a good chunk of workers. Something that I have continued actually to prioritize upgrading is housing 4, and I think that's actually a good prompt. We should go ahead and do that as well. This number is deceptive. Remember, we paused all of these, and so they of course will need pops once we have it all built in order for it to work. We're getting there out here. We're not there yet, but a lot of stuff is built that wasn't previously, so that's good news. In the exhaust side, I mean, honestly, this slag station is functional, I think, with just the one. I mean, trains have to be able to pass through this, so that's technically not true. But we're pretty close, actually. A couple random odds and ends on belts and such. Of course, the water pipeline will be another big one. Let's help that one along. And wouldn't it be nice if the storage buffer could get going? So let's crank up that priority. Other than that, though, still just playing the waiting game. So our fertility has come all the way back, and we even have a nice little stockpile on fertilizer. So that's pretty good. And in fact, it's so good that it's allowed us to crank up a bit on Unity consumption, or production of Unity at the expense of food consumption. And that has allowed us to continue affording this steel production surge. So I would consider this resolved for now, although I'm going to keep our little ghost blueprint here as a reminder that this is still an issue and we will probably need to solve it eventually. But we have kicked the can successfully further down the road with our increase in diesel storage out here. Well, looking at the runtime, I think the rubber side of the equation is going to be a next episode thing, but let's try to get copper, at least, up and running this episode. The thing we're going to need in order to make that happen that we don't yet have sorted is going to be sulfur. As a reminder, we need sulfur for the acid at the last stage here. And we're going to be providing a good amount of it through the exhaust scrubber setup here, but I think we're going to need a bit of supplemental sulfur as an import. We are not fully confident about the long-term balance of sulfur being imported or exported, but I'm quite confident in the short term, if nothing else, there's a large acid buffer, we're going to need to import some at the start. So that could come from a couple places. We generate sulfur a few other places around the base, and in fact, right now we are exporting a small but still somewhat meaningful amount of it via this contract in exchange for coal. I do on occasion see a truck come over and drop some off here, but it's a very small amount. So I don't think we have a ton of excess sulfur to spare here, but we do have some. It's a non-zero amount. So that's one option. And what we can do is have it come out here and drop off at this storage instead. This then is on our Silicon Ridge network, and that will, because this is all electrified, still work to send a train out to bring it all in. Like I said, I don't get the feeling that that's going to be sufficient as is, and so the other place that we can get sulfur, you won't see deposits of it on the map here, but there is a world sulfur mine. So I quickly repaired this and have started to build up a bit of a buffer. What we can do in the longer run, but again, I just kind of want to see how it plays out before we commit to building any infrastructure, but what we can do, if we have to import that in any meaningful amount, is just repurpose this ship. If we need to be importing sulfur from the world mine, by definition, we aren't going to want to export it for coal. That would just be convoluted and inefficient. So we could very simply just change the purpose of this ship and leave it in the exact same spot. Flip the orientation of this storage, and they're both sulfur supplies. We would probably want to consider setting that up onto rail if that ended up being stable in the long term, but again, not certain how this is going to shake out. So for now, what we're going to do is start by just bringing any extra sulfur that we have around the base. This will be set to a low priority import, whereas that contract is set to accept but do not request. So this should be above that but below everything else here. And hopefully that then will trigger our Silicon Ridge network to come in and supply this station. Let's see how that goes. I don't know how we'll have to adjust, but I do know that we'll have to adjust. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And our tree harvesters finished up out here, which is excellent news. It means that we can build the other side of this and start to import wood from Islatres, and that means we'll need to set up on the other end of things this new station. So what this will do is, in the place of the old one we had here for our oil mine, this will accept, but not supply directly, a good pile of wood, hopefully, whatever we grab out here. And by the way, this happened while I wasn't looking. Our tree harvesters really crushed our poor little supply here. So I've let them go out here and sort of distract themselves with a couple other patches. And you know what? Why not get the beach? I do think we're going to end up having to mine this beach eventually. So I think we'll have to let the aesthetics go by the wayside. But over here, we will have a train that dedicated one-to-one, right? Single origin, single destination. We will have a single line that exports wood, the Islatres wood export route. And so what we'll do here is say, okay, leave here only if you are full, and when you do, come on out here and drop off. So it's a shuttle on this end, or it's a bi-directional route on this end, but you know, there's already a loop here, so we'll make use of it out this way. What that means then is a steam shuttle, the way that we, actually I guess I have to go to the depot because it's not built yet, the exact same model of train we've been using in this episode, the bidirectional fireless steam with a pair of tier 2 flatbeds, and it will get fueled on its steam because it's not passing through any fuel stations on this route naturally. It'll get fueled from this boiler, which is making steam from wood chips, since we have wood right here, and we'll just have our trucks drop it off whenever they are about to drop off wood in another immediate nearby location. So that felt handy. I don't know if it's necessarily the optimal train here, but it's really not going far. It's essentially a glorified bridge shuttle. So we're gonna do that. It just felt like a nifty way to use the wood chip recipe. So here we go. Let's see how it goes. Oh, and the other thing, since the trees got annihilated that quickly, the other thing I've done is queue up a few more tree planters, and it looks like one has already been completed, so let's go ahead and assign him out here. Both of them. Brilliant. So this should hopefully speed up that process of planting, because yeah, we need them to really get more trees in the ground if that's how quickly we're gonna rip them up. Alright, so we were getting a little bit of sulfur out here, and that's great. We want to use it, of course, but it wasn't quite enough, certainly not to set up an initial stockpile of sulfur out there. So what I've done is, as a hopefully just one-off, one-time thing, sent the boat to go pick up the 5k sulfur and change that was already piling up out here at the sulfur mine. Hopefully, again, that is a one-time thing. If we do need to consistently bring in that type of volume, we'll just swap this over, as mentioned. I did say, please, do not drop anything off here at this export. That really would be silly. But this should get our trucks dumping all of that out in here in relatively short order. There's a little bit coming. So as soon as that all gets moving, we should have it hitting the network, which will be good timing because we're in motion out here. We have our first little bits of copper trickling in, which is lovely to see. I did fool around a little bit with rerouting these belts so that I could extend these tracks. As feared, we needed just a little bit more extension in order for our trains to be able to get the full 4-car long version to drop off the coal at this innermost station. So we'll do a little up and over, no problem. And then, yeah, everything's in motion, including exhaust coming all the way out and around and hitting the exhaust scrubber, and in short order, once the limestone, which we've just added now to the manufacturing network, once the limestone is dropped off, we'll be in motion at this side of things too. And a little while later, everything's working out pretty smoothly. We've got our first bits of copper starting to pile up here in our storage and our export station. Everything is working on the input side, and we're grinding away, getting through the blast furnace stage. Seem to be draining the slag okay for now, at least. This will certainly fill up, and we'll need to get a train on that as well. But other than that, this is pretty much good to go indefinitely. Our acid supply is sufficient. We've only built just the one mixer, frankly. At this point, that's enough. And the sulfur supply that we've injected is so far so good. And in fact, we've taken it all out of that main ship. So yeah, we're in a good spot for now. That's for sure. The exhaust scrubber is sufficient for the number that we've built so far. So that means we have 1/2 of electronics done, and we'll actually get to their production, I think, next episode. Of course, the first thing we'll have to do is get this refinery up and going so that we have rubber production. That's the other half besides the copper. Although, you know, by volume, copper is more than half. So let's say that we got the majority of the work done today. I think that's fair. All right, so I think that's where we're going to leave it for today. Let's check some stuff off the to-do list, give ourselves credit. We got copper sorted. Rubber is for next time, but I think pretty manageable. We got the construction parts factory revamp sorted, even if we are going to leave this old setup on the board for a bit yet. It's still productive capacity, and we could use it just to build up a bit more on the buffer side of things. So we'll say cleanup is an item for next time, but we got the revamp sorted. We also got forestry set up out here on Islatres, and it's looking good. It's looking good. This is filling in nicely with the extra couple of tree planters. I'm sure we'll end up having to eventually work on our tree sapling production rate, but so far so good. Nice to see there. And yeah, I think we are doing just fine out here as well. We got, of course, a good amount of infrastructure that will be helpful beyond just the copper build. Of course, the exhaust scrubbing is very good to see, and a good amount of, yeah, the water pipeline and some other tracks and everything. So we will continue to work out here, of course, and I'm sure there's plenty of troubleshooting yet to do on the train network front. I'm sure in particular, definitely bounced into a couple traffic things here and there. We're going to need to add some more trains. We're going to need to add flatbed trains next time so we can move the copper around. And of course, we're going to actually set up our production of the final good, which means we'll get our export station stuff going. So that will be lovely, I think, to actually have on the board. Looking forward to that. All that and more in the next one. We're definitely wading out into the deep end of the build. Lots left to do and plenty left to iterate, but hey, that's the whole point. That makes the game fun. And I'm definitely enjoying myself. If you are too, make sure to stop by again next time. Until then though, have a great rest of your day, and bye-bye.